for sinister hiking tales of terrifying encounters with the haunted and cursed wilderness revealed. The wind howled through the trees as Sarah parked her old minivan in the gravel lot, her heart racing. The nearby mountains loomed high and menacing, shrouded in fog as if ready to swallow her whole. She glanced at Mia and Ethan in the back seat, their innocent faces illuminated by the late afternoon sun. Today was about adventure, about shaking off the shadows that had been creeping into her life. The stories she overheard at the diner, whispers of the whistler haunting the woods, clawed at her mind, but she pushed them aside. They were just legends, right? As they stepped onto the trail, wildflowers burst into color around them, a false reassurance. Laughter filled the air, echoing off the trees like a symphony of joy. But Sarah felt a chill, as if the mountains were alive, watching. For a fleeting moment, all her worries washed away. Yet, the moment the childlike giggles faded, the forest's sounds twisted into something darker, an unsettling atmosphere creeping in. The birds fell silent, and a chilling whistle twisted between the trees, haunting and distant. Sarah shivered, dismissing it as her overactive imagination, and led her kids forward. But fear gnawed at her insides as every time the whistle echoed, it sounded closer. Was she imagining it? She clutched the old map her grandfather had given her, hoping it would guide them safely. Yet the trees grew thicker, the path winding deeper into the heart of the woods like a snake ready to strike. Suddenly, they stumbled upon scraps of abandoned gear, an old tent frayed and torn, a half-buried backpack stained with something dark and ominous. A gnawing instinct curled in her stomach. It was just the remnants of careless campers, right? Just as she decided they would push through, a glinting campsite appeared further down the trail, fires crackling and laughter spilling out like poison. "Look, Mom! Campers!" Mia squealed, but something in Sarah twisted. They approached cautiously, smiles plastered on the strangers' faces felt unnatural, eyes too bright, and a hint of malice loomed just beyond their kind words. The tales about a park ranger exploiting the forest flickered in her mind, as they shared stories of danger and mythical creatures hidden in the woods. There was a darkness beneath their laughter she couldn't quite shake that as twilight descended. A sense of foreboding settled heavy on her shoulders. The laughter blurred into whispers, and once more, the whistle returned, this time omnipresent and mocking. Sarah gathered the kids close, her heart thundering. "Let us go back." Her voice trembled as she tried to remain calm. "But Mom, we want to stay," Ethan pleaded, his eyes wide with innocence and trust. She felt terror twist at her heart. Could she protect them? The camper's tone shifted, the stories turning into something sinister as darkness enveloped them, laughter morphing into a chilling chant. Sarah's breath quickened, and the shadows around them grew claws, creeping closer as if to capture her family. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Just then, footsteps echoed behind them, a soft, deliberate crunch on the leaves that froze her blood. Sarah turned, panic clawing at her throat. The wind rustled through the leaves as if whispering secrets of danger. As darkness clawed at the edges, she realized then, belief in the stories was not foolishness. The tale of the whistler wasn't just folklore, and whatever lurked in these mountains was ready to claim the innocent. As Mia squeezed her hand tighter, Sarah could almost feel the malevolence lurking just beneath the surface of their campsite. What secrets were hidden in this darkened wood? And would the forest's legends claim her children before dawn? The wind picked up, whipping through the trees with a fierce howl that made Sarah's skin crawl. A sharp whistle echoed again, and this time, it felt like it was right next to her, as if it wrapped around her like thick fog. She clutched Mia and Ethan close, praying that whatever was lurking would lose interest. But the campers' eyes glinted with too much enthusiasm, their smiles stretching just a little too wide. Tell us a story. One of the campers called out, his voice dripping with an eerie charm. It felt like an invitation and a command, a trap perfectly set. Sarah heard faint echoes of a warning in her head. The tales of those who had disappeared into the woods, claimed by the whistler. Her heart raced as she forced a smile. We should really be going, she stammered, glancing up at the darkening sky. Stay. We have stories too. You'll love them, another camper urged, his hands gesturing animatedly. Mom, but they're nice, Mia protested, shifting impatiently. Mia, listen to me. Sarah's voice was a strained whisper, but the way her daughter's face lit with curiosity pierced through her anxiety. It was just the unfamiliar environment, she thought, but a small creeping sensation trickled down her spine. The campers seemed to feed off the shadows, their faces turning into grotesque masks of twisted glee as the trees swayed around them, warping the scene into a chilling dance. Suddenly, the laughter turned sharp like glass breaking. Sarah's instincts screamed. We're leaving now, she declared, yanking Mia's hand as she pulled Ethan along. But just as they turned back towards the trail, the group of campers moved like a shadow around them, blocking their way. Their smiles had vanished, revealing rows of grinning teeth. Did you hear that? One of them said, a malevolent gleam in his dark eyes. He's coming. What do you know about him? Sarah's voice broke as she gripped her children's hands tighter, feeling their tiny fingers tremble, mirroring her own fear. That sound, another camper whispered. It's the way he calls for you. The whistle returned, louder this time. A dark call that seemed to tear through the night air, echoing off the trees like a death knell. Instinctively, Sarah glanced back toward the woods, her breath quickening as she spotted shadows in the distance, creeping with an unnatural slowness. They were tall and moving, the forms indistinct but undeniably menacing. Come closer, the first camper crooned, tilting his head as if trying to coax a frightened animal. He's just misunderstood. You wouldn't want to be rude, would you? The shadows flickered closer, dancing in and out of the dying light, and she felt her pulse quicken even more. No time. They had to go. Run, Sarah shouted, her voice slicing through the thick tension in the air. She turned and bolted down the trail, the weight of fear pushing her forward. Ethan and Mia followed, their small feet pattering behind her as they dashed, urgency propelling them. But even as they ran, the whistle followed, weaving in and out of the darkness like a sinister thread, a melody without a source. The night swallowed sounds around them, their laughter fading into shrieks of terror as something unseen pulled at them, urging them to retreat, to come back into the embrace of the darkness. With every step, the path twisted and turned, becoming a labyrinth that seemed to fight against her. Each glance over her shoulder revealed the campers, their faces twisted into grotesque expressions, their laughter echoing hauntingly in the night. They weren't merely camped out, they were waiting. She could feel it in her bones. And that whistle, was it a warning or was it beckoning? As that chilling sound climbed in tone, urging them further into the night, Sarah realized the whispers carried more than just a warning. Her resolve hardened. She would confront whatever lay ahead, no matter the cost. But even as she ran, a question gnawed at her insides. What would happen if they couldn't escape? Just then, a low growl reverberated through the trees, sending a new wave of chills down her spine. The darkness was alive, and it was hunting them. What awaited them at the end of this crooked path? The path twisted like a serpent, branches twisting overhead as if trying to capture them. Sarah's breath came in shallow gasps, the air thick with dread. The growl echoed again, closer this time, the sound rumbling through the shadows like a dark promise. Mom! Ethan's voice wobbled as he stumbled behind her. She turned, panic swirling as she saw his eyes wide with terror. Keep up, honey. We can't stop, she urged, gripping his hand tighter. The air felt electric with a palpable fear that wrapped around them like chains, entwining Sarah's heart with every tick of the clock in her mind. The campers were just behind them now, a sinister chorus of giggles trailing in the dark. It was a tune almost melodic, soothing with the intent to trap. Each step they took made the sound grow, echoing through the trees. The whistle, the source of that horrible sound, was too near now, an invisible specter lurking just out of sight. "Please, let us go back," Mia whimpered, her small voice like a fragile thread in the wind. "No," Sarah snapped, fighting to maintain control, though her own fear threatened to drown her. "We have to find a safe place." But what was waiting for them? The shadows around them swirled, thickening almost like fog, blurring her vision. She stumbled, losing her footing and feeling Ethan's grip slip as she fell. The forest opened up like a maw, and in that instant, she felt a strange connection, a pull urging her to stay. The laughter faded, replaced by something deeper, colder. "Help!" Ethan cried, reaching for her. She hurriedly pulled herself up, heart pounding. Just then, a shrill whistle sliced through the air, halting her breath and sending cold fingers of fear racing down her spine. It was a signal, a call in the darkness. They didn't listen to her panic. They wanted to play, to draw them back into the heart of the forest where the darkness thrived, where shadows became monsters and laughter turned to screams. The ground fell away beneath them as they stumbled, a sudden drop forcing Sarah to yank them back from an unseen edge. "Mom, I can't see," Ethan gasped, the scent of earth and leaves filling their noses as the moonlight dimmed into an oppressive hush. "Stay close," Sarah shouted, the last of her courage built like a wall against the surrounding shadows. She dared a quick glance back. The campers were gone, their gleeful expressions replaced by a chilling stillness. But then she saw them, just beyond the trees, eyes glinting hunger in the dark. The campers watched with that same disturbing smile, their bodies gliding forward with sickening fluidity, drawing closer like puppets to a marionette of strings. "Mom!" Mia squealed, her voice high and tight. "Run! Now!" Sarah bellowed, adrenaline surging once again. They turned, racing away, hearts in their throats. Branches reached out to snatch at their clothes, scratching her arms, the sting like an echo of the whistling. But the path split before them, two trails branching deep into the blackened woods. Sarah hesitated, panic rising, breathing heavy like a storm brewing within. She had to choose a gamble with fate, too risky to consider. "Mom, which way?" Ethan cried, voice breaking. "Left," she shouted, taking a deep breath. The sound of laughter burst into a raucous cheer behind them, like they were cheering on a contest. She bolted left as the ground sloped precariously downward. The whistle grew louder, a haunting melody wrapping around her until it almost felt like it was pulling her closer. And then, the shadows shifted at the edges of her vision, lights flickering a fire? Sarah couldn't think. She needed to keep moving. But if it was a trap? "Please, please," she murmured under her breath as they raced on. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown. They were almost there, racing toward the glow. But what awaited them? The warning whispers clawed at the back of her mind, echoing the terror of the campers, the sinister shape of the woods. What horrors were hidden in that light? As they dashed closer, in the corner of her eye, something shifted, a shape lunged, and her scream erupted. Into the night, in that moment, all thoughts of escape faded. Was it too late to turn back? The scream tore through the night like a knife, echoing off the dark trees as Sarah stumbled. Heart racing, she turned to grab Ethan and Mia, feeling the earth shift beneath them. The glow ahead flickered ominously, drawing them closer. Before they could steady themselves, a figure burst from the shadows, an adult, pale and gaunt, eyes wide and vacant. It was like looking into a mirror reflecting madness. "Run," he hissed, a beastly whisper mingling with the rustling leaves. The gleam of his teeth cut through the darkness as he smiled. But it was all wrong, like a mockery of something sweet. Sarah briefly wondered if he was savior or monster, but the truth was too horrifying to imagine. With no time to waste, Sarah yanked Ethan and Mia towards the flickering light. They stumbled forward, feet pounding against the earth, the whistle surrounding them like a chorus of spirits summoning them into the depths of despair. The campers were behind them now, closer than ever, their laughter merging with the whistle, a dissonant symphony of joy and horror. "Mom, I'm scared." Ethan's voice quaked, tears shining in his wide eyes. "Just hold on," Sarah shouted, determination fueling her steps. It was now or never. They needed to reach that light, a beacon or a trap, she didn't know. As they bumped into one another, crashing through the underbrush, the light revealed itself. It was a campfire, but it flickered like a candle in the wind, casting harsh shadows all around. The flames danced high, eager flames as if they were hungry, and around the fire sat the campers, their faces painted in grotesque grins. Distorted laughter echoed from them, each laugh a dagger in her heart. "Join us," they chirped, voices choppy like broken records. The gaunt man lurked at the edge, eyes too gleaming, begging her to come closer. "Don't look at them," Sarah yelled over her shoulder, steering her children. But something pulled at her, an invisible tether that whispered promises of safety in return for something darker. Her heart thudded in her chest, each beat mingling with the fire's crackling. But in that confusion, one child, Tommy, wobbled forward, stepping closer to the flames. "I want to play," he cried, the innocent invitation swallowed by a deep, resonant growl from the woods. "Tommy!" No, it was too late. The shadows behind him swam forward, a monstrous mass revealed by the firelight. The campers abandoned their charade, and dread surged through Sarah's veins. They leapt to their feet, faces twisted in expectation, and the gaunt man lunged forward, a predatory glint in his eye. "Run!" Sarah screamed again, fear wrapping around her throat like a noose. They turned, racing back into the dark. The desperation surged, air growing thick as they stumbled on, fear flooding through every frantic step. Jarring laughter trailed behind them, filling the silence with dire predictions. Suddenly, the path ahead split again, but this time, the laughter grew louder, almost mocking. Which way? Every instinct screamed to go away from the malevolent sound, yet both paths held their own darkness. "Mom, please," Mia sobbed, looking left and right. "Choose," Sarah cried out, mind racing. "We can't stay here." What was lurking behind them? The trees seemed more menacing than ever, intertwining like claws ready to embrace. They were encircled, almost caught in this nightmare. With the campers closing in, and that sinister laughter growing louder by the second, Sarah had no choice. "Right. We go right," she gasped. She ripped forward through the narrow trail, branches clawing at her skin. Each step felt like a countdown. Every rustle sent chills skittering down her spine. But another shriek pierced the air, a sound neither human nor beast. What was chasing them? And more importantly, would they survive to find out? As the darkness pressed in, Sarah's mind raced with one looming fear. What if this was only the beginning? They surged through the thicket, adrenaline coursing through their veins, their breath jagged and frantic. The direction they chose twisted and turned, looming shapes whispering in shadows around them. Sarah could hear the laughter chasing them, sinister and jubilant, a melody that clawed at her sanity. "Faster!" she hissed, pushing her children ahead. She could feel their small hands slipping slightly in her grasp, the dampness of fear mixing with the autumn chill. Panic churned in her stomach. Each step threatened to lead them into an unseen trap. Just as they burst onto a narrow path, the ground sunk beneath Ethan's feet, and he let out a frightened yelp, nearly tumbling. Sarah turned, heart in her throat. "Ethan, Mom, there's something in the trees." His voice trembled as he pointed. Eyes wide, he could see it even if Sarah couldn't. The twisted branches seemed to twist themselves together, forming dark figures that beckoned. She could feel her resolve wavering, the temptation of those painted faces whispering sweet nothings just out of reach. "No, keep going," she shouted, her voice cracking in the thickening night air. She cursed herself for looking back, for even hesitating. The laughter became a cacophony, the campers now behind them, picking up speed, hungry for fear. Rushing forward, they stumbled into an openness, a small clearing barely lit by a half-moon that cast ghostly shadows. The trees loomed around them like ancient giants, and the air felt thick as syrup, wrapping around her chest. Suddenly, a moaning sound tore through the night, a child's voice echoing, pleading for help. It came from the depths of the woods behind them. Sarah felt a jolt of dread. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. But both Ethan and Mia were frozen, eyes fixed on the dark beyond. "Mom, we have to go back," Mia whimpered, her small frame shaking. "No," Sarah insisted, the weight of her children's lives pressing heavily against her. "We can't. It's a trick, the last sound we want to follow." Yet deep within her, the instinct to help battled with the primal urge to survive. As if on cue, flashes of movement surged at the edge of their vision, shadowy figures creeping closer, always keeping just beyond the moonlight. Familiar faces twisted in deranged grins, eyes glowing dangerously like hot embers. Her heart pounded like a war drum, the urge to flee suffocating. Yet they were already too exposed. She spotted a narrow trail leading further into the trees, untouched by the laughter and shadows that danced behind them. "That way," Sarah yelled, not waiting for an answer. She took a sharp turn, darting down that faintly lit path. The sound of her children following, the sporadic thud of their footfalls, kept her focused and pulling them onward, deeper into the unknown, pressing forward. The branches clawed at them, angry with their intrusion, and behind them, the laughter morphed, nasally and mocking, taunting their retreat. "You can't escape." Stumbling further along the darkened trail, the atmosphere began to change, the air thickening like fog cloaking their senses. The laughter faded, and an eerie silence engulfed them, but dread filled the void. Something hung heavy in the air, omnipresent and watching. "Mom, what is that?" Ethan collapsed against a tree, panting heavily, eyes wide with terror. "Stay close," Sarah instructed, scanning their surroundings. The night closed in, shadows contracting and expanding unnaturally. Then, a rustling sound from behind a figure stepped into the dim light. Not quite human, skin hanging loosely, face twisted in a perpetual grin. It opened its mouth wide, a soundless scream escaping, and Sarah froze, heart clenching in dread. "Turn around and play with us," the figure crooned, voice slithering through the air. "Run," she screamed, tearing her gaze away from the grotesque apparition, but panic rooted her feet in place. What had they really stumbled into? The darkness beckoned once more, but this time, Sarah feared it wasn't only the campers chasing them. Would they find a way out alive? The figure lurched toward them, each step deliberate, as if savoring the fear rippling in the air. The grin widened, grotesquely illuminating its face like a moonlit mask. With a jolt, Sarah felt the grip of her instincts surge. Fight or flight questions rumbled through her mind. "Mom, we have to go." Mia's voice broke through the haze of terror, urgency snapping Sarah into action. She turned and plunged down the path, her heart a staccato rhythm drumming in her ears, dragging her children behind. Branches clawed at them like skeletal fingers, scratching and snagging their clothes as they darted deeper into the suffocating darkness. The laughter had vanished, replaced by a menacing whisper that wound through the trees, echoing both ahead and behind, trailing them like a hunting shadow. "Keep moving. Don't look back," Sarah urged, breathless. Ethan stumbled just behind her, a terrified whimper slipping from his lips. She could feel his fear like a tangible weight pulling them down. Suddenly, a flash of light caught her eye, a glimmer that sliced through the oppressive blackness. A cabin. In the depths of the woods stood an old, decrepit structure, its windows cracked and dark, but one flickered with a warm, inviting glow. Hope sparked inside her. Could it be shelter? "Mom, no," Ethan cried, clinging tighter to her hand. "It's a trap. I can feel it. We can't just stand here," Sarah snapped, desperation flooding her voice. The trees seemed to shift, their trunks twisting in malevolent shapes, keen to ensnare them within their branches. She had to choose: fight the fear inside, or succumb to an unseen terror. A scream pierced the night behind them, a child's voice, echoing a chilling familiarity that sunk deep into her bones. "Let us go," Sarah shouted, dragging her children towards the cabin. As they neared, the door creaked open on its own, revealing nothing but darkness inside. Through the yawning entryway, the warm glow pulsated, mesmerizing in contrast to the shadows they fled. "Mom!" Please, Mia whimpered, panic in her voice. "LL eat us alive. Stay close," she ordered, pushing forward. They lunged into the cabin, and the door slammed shut behind them with a violent thud. It was pitch dark, yet the flickering light danced just in front of them. Beckoning, heavy silence enveloped them, broken only by the sound of their ragged breaths. The walls creaked under the weight of their fear, and a chill skittered across Sarah's skin. They reached for the source of the light, hands trembling as they brushed aside cobwebs, heart pounding louder with each step. What lay ahead? Would they find a fragile refuge or an even grimmer fate? Suddenly, the flickering light extinguished, plunging them into an agonizing void where only a soft, mocking laughter remained, echoing louder and louder, filling the stagnant air until it became unbearable. "Turn around and play with us," a chorus of voices chimed, the same sinister tone that had haunted them moments before. "Mom!" Ethan cried, fear exploding in his voice. "Mia!" Sarah shouted, panic surging as she realized the children were slipping from her grasp. In the pitch black, she felt a presence drawing closer, dark and heavy. Should she scream or fight? Thoughts collided within her turmoil. Where were the children? Panic clawed at her insides as she spun around, searching for any hint of light or direction in the terrifying blackness. Then, a flicker surged back, and in its glow stood the twisted figure, open-mouthed and grinning, just a heartbeat away. Playtime is just beginning. A wave of dread washed over her. What else lay hidden in the shadows? What horrors awaited? Sarah's heart raced. They might be caught in something they couldn't begin to understand. The darkness felt cloying, like a wet blanket suffocating every breath she attempted. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Each beat echoed like a thunderous alarm in the silence. She fought the urge to scream, the primal instinct battling against the sounds of terror lurking in the shadows. "Ethan! Mia!" She felt her voice cracking, desperation flooding her tone. Fear knotted in her stomach as she whipped around, trying to find them in the void, calling out into nothingness. "Mom!" Ethan's voice bounced off the walls, a soft sound swallowed by the deep blackness. "Stay with me." The command came out sharp, desperate. She could feel shifting shadows all around, pulsating threats that reached for her even in the silence. The twisted figure from before stole her focus, looming just beyond the edge of the fading light. Its grin grew wider, an awful abyss of anticipation. "Is it you who called?" The voice was now distinctly deeper, throaty with malice, wrapping around her like a snake. The figure began to step closer, the floor creaking under its weight. Sarah stumbled back, every instinct screaming at her to run, yet her feet felt nailed to the floor. "Mom, I can't see." Mia's voice trembled again, shivering with terror. Sarah's heart splintered at the thought of her children in this nightmare. "Ethan!" she shouted again, gripping nothing but panic. The atmosphere was thick, heavy. She needed to act to get everyone moving. She reached blindly forward, hands stretching out into the darkness, feeling for the warm, familiar forms of her children. "That's right, reach out, you'll find so much more." The deep laughter rolled through the cabin, wrapping around her throat like barbed wire, squeezing tight. In a moment, the pinprick of light reappeared, flickering like a dying star. It cast strange, disorienting shadows that danced around the walls, resembling faces frozen in horror. "Stay away," she shouted, flinching at the grinning figure. It swayed closer, as if the rhythm of its body matched the beat of her accelerating heart. She felt the cold slip of dread sliding down her spine. Then, in a burst of adrenaline, she lunged into the flickering light, praying it would lead her to her kids. The laughter echoed off the cabin walls, tormenting her as she stumbled ahead. Just as it felt like the darkness would swallow her whole, she collided with a sturdy frame. "Mia! Mia!" Relief surged through her, but it was short-lived. The cabin around her began to change, twisting out of shape like a funhouse mirror. Sarah could feel the very air turning thick, a palpable shift that tinged her senses with treachery. "Where's Ethan?" Mia whimpered. Fear painted her small face, and the shadows crept closer. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, straining to hear Ethan's voice over the heart-stopping laughter. Clutching Mia's hand tightly, they pressed against the wall, hoping to hide from the looming figure. "Look how afraid you are, so precious," the voice cooed. Then, without warning, a jagged crack cut through the silence. Ethan's scream. It rang out from deep within the shadows, and her pulse quickened at the terror laced within it. Panic surged anew as Sarah turned back, heart pounding. She had to find him. The walls felt alive, shifting in a wretched dance as she raced deeper into the heart of the cabin. "Ethan," she called, her voice trembling. An icy touch brushed against her back, sending chills racing over her. She spun, but nothing was there. Only the faint outline of the laughter reached her ears, a terrible, hollow sound that promised chaos. Then, an unexpected silence fell, thick as fog, wrapping around her like a shroud. "Where are you?" The query trembled from her lips, tinged with dread. Then a whisper floated through the still air, cold and chilling. "Behind you." Sarah turned slowly, dread pooling in her stomach, and saw a door slamming open. Pitch black beyond it beckoned, just like the void from where they fled. How could there be another escape? And why did it feel like an invitation to something sinister? As the laughter returned, swirling through the cabin, like smoke, she felt it, the sensation of being watched. Clutching Mia's hand, they backed away, the shadows advancing. Fear gripped her tighter. What awaited them outside those wooden confines? Was Ethan lost to that unbearable darkness forever? With only the ominous laughter and a desperate prayer for her son, Sarah took a trembling breath, preparing to face something even darker. Moving in sync with her frantic heartbeat, Sarah squeezed Mia's hand tighter. The door loomed before them, exuding a sinister pull, as if the darkness behind it had a life of its own. The laughter swirled ominously around them, an echo of mocking maliciousness. "Mia, can you feel that?" Sarah whispered, her breath shallow. With every passing moment, the air grew heavier, suffocating. The shadows shifted and undulated, stretching out like long fingers reaching for their prey. "Mom, I don't want to go out there." Mia stumbled on her words, her tiny voice quaking with terror. The girl looked up, her eyes wide and glistening, all innocence clouded by fear. But Sarah knew they couldn't stay put. Ethan needed them. "We have to find Ethan. He needs us." She swallowed hard, preparing to step forward while forcing her legs to move. With one shaky breath for courage, she pivoted toward the dark entrance. The threshold trembled with an anticipation that felt otherworldly. As they stepped closer, a cold draft snaked around them, chills clawing at their skin like bony hands. "Go," she urged, and they plunged through the doorway together. The moment they crossed the threshold, the air changed. A heavy silence enveloped them, overpowering the mocking laughter. They entered a narrow corridor, walls blotched with dark stains that seemed to grow as they stared. The flickering light from behind only penetrated so far, and beyond, it was as if the darkness devoured every sound, every breath. "Ethan," Sarah shouted, her voice barely a whisper, now lost in the oppressive void. But there was no answer, only an echo that faded into the surrounding nothingness. Mia tugged at her arm, her face pale. "Mom, what if the shadows get us?" Seichu. Sarah silenced her, scanning the corridor. It felt endless, as if it had no beginning and no end. Just as dread sank its claws deeper into her heart, she caught a flicker of movement at the far end, a vague outline that stirred in the shadows. Expectant hope surged through her until it coalesced into sheer fear again. Was it Ethan, or something they couldn't possibly comprehend? Panic spread, and she beckoned her daughter to stay close. "Mia, stay behind me," she ordered, stepping forward. "Do we have to?" Mia's eyes were wide, darting around at every flicker and sound. This place was bending them, threatening to twist their sanity apart. "Ethan." Another heartfelt cry tore through her throat as they reached the end of the corridor. The shadows writhed, swirling harder, distorting her sense of direction. Suddenly, an oppressive weight bore down on them, overshadowing everything. The darkness surged, rushing at them like a tidal wave. "Mom!" Mia shrieked, eyes filled with terror. In one heartbeat, The walls around them began to pulse, as if the cabin itself were alive, sinking with their fear. The laughter returned, louder and more manic, filling the space as shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, taunting their vulnerability. Breathless with dread, Sarah pulled Mia into the open space of another room. The chamber was vast. She could barely see the far wall, only more shadows and that same insipid laugh rolling around them, threatening to consume them whole. "What is this place?" Mia whispered, trembling. "I don't know," Sarah muttered, looking around, but something in the depths of the room caught her attention. A faint light, glimmering like a star lost in chaos. It beckoned them, illuminating just enough to reveal segments of the room: a table, old and covered in dust, chairs that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades, and in the corner something moving. "Ethan?" she called, but the light flickered and dimmed as if to tease her. Dancing just out of reach, a thud echoed behind her, sending waves of ice through her. The door slammed shut with a deafening clap, the darkness retreating only to consolidate its grip around them. "Mom!" Mia shrieked, and Sarah turned to see a silhouette emerging from the shadows, low and amorphous, curling toward them. Their eyes met, but could it be him? Or was it something worse, something ready to engulf them into its own eternal night? "What do you want?" Sarah yelled, heart racing, but the laughter spiraled outward, rising in pitch, drowning her words. They were trapped, but something told her this was only the beginning. As the shape advanced, one final question hung heavy in the air. Could they survive what lurked in the dark? Or would they be just another tale of terror in the haunted woods? The darkness loomed closer, tightening its grip around Sarah and Mia. The shape writhed, contorting as if it had a mind of its own, the shadows shifting and twisting into monstrous forms. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She felt like a deer in headlights, paralyzed by fear as the silhouette glided toward them with eerie, fluid movements. "Mia, don't look," she gasped, pulling her daughter close. But Mia's wide eyes remained glued to the figure between them and any potential escape. The laughter crescendoed, drowning out their thoughts, a cacophony of despair echoing against the cold, damp walls. "Mom?" Mia stammered, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf on the edge of a storm. "Just stay with me," Sarah urged, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. They had to find a way out, but every instinct screamed at her to run while there was still time. The room felt like it was closing in, the walls contracting as oppressive pressure mounted. A visceral pulse synced to the reckless beat of her heart. Sarah scanned the room, desperate for anything that could help them. The old, dust-covered table caught her eye again, but before she could think deeper, the flickering light behind her illuminated the figure once more, revealing twisted features that sent a jolt of terror through her. Was it Ethan's face, warped into a nightmare version of itself? No, she couldn't think that. A low growl, rumbling from the depths of the shadows, jarred her back to the present. The silhouette surged forward, a rush of darkness shrouded in an insatiable hunger. Sarah felt her legs weaken, her will to fight wavering. Suddenly, Mia let go of her grip and stepped forward, her innocence shining like a soft beacon. "Ethan?" she called, her voice piercing through the madness. "Are you in there?" "Mia, no! Get back!" Sarah yelled, panic squeezing her lungs. But it was too late. The silhouette froze, contemplating the child, the laughter dying into a heavy, suffocating silence. The air crackled with tension, and Sarah felt an overwhelming urge to flee. Her instincts told her to protect her daughter. But there was something almost magnetic about the way the shape regarded Mia, as if sensing the shift. The figure extended an arm toward Mia. Shadows clasped around her like cold fingers, wrapping around her tiny frame. Sarah lunged forward, desperation fueled by a mother's love. "Stay away from her," she screamed. In that moment of chaos, the flickering light surged brighter, illuminating the depths of the room for a fleeting second. Was that a doorway? "Mia, run!" Sarah shouted, pushing her daughter toward the abrupt glimmer of hope. But the shadows were relentless, pulling at Mia's feet, dragging her backwards and forcing her to scream with a surge of adrenaline. Sarah dove toward her daughter, snatching her back just as the darkness erupted. The figure recoiled, hissing as it retreated momentarily. "Over there," Sarah shouted, pointing to the shimmering light. But as they ran, the laughter returned, a sinister duet mixing with their frantic footsteps. It was not just the walls that were alive. The very air itself seemed charged with malice, eager to consume them. "Mom, I'm scared," Mia cried, her voice snapping Sarah from the haze of fear. "I know, sweetie," she whispered harshly, urging her legs to move faster. They staggered toward the light, but the shadows writhed violently around them, threatening to pull them back into despair as they reached the threshold. The floor crumbled beneath them, revealing a dark abyss, an ink-black void that seemed to stretch into eternity. They both gasped, the ground giving way as they became entangled in the looming darkness. Just as they were about to fall, hands like iron rays grabbed at Sarah, pulling her back with agonizing force. "Mom!" Mia screamed, as Sarah clawed to keep hold of the fading light. Then, in an instant of horrifying clarity, a voice broke through the chaos, cold and familiar, slithering through the expanse. "Help me!" It was Ethan. Devastating realization flooded Sarah. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a race against time to save Ethan from whatever fate had befallen him. Would they succumb to the shadows, or could they break the grip of darkness before it consumed them all? Each second screamed uncertainty, and as they teetered on the edge, the cursed laughter swelled ominously around them, promising no mercy. Next chapter. What awaited them in the depths, the truth or a final descent into madness? The darkness loomed ahead, an ever-thickening wall of despair. Sarah felt a tremor ripple through her, pulling her in every direction as though the very air conspired against them. But one thing remained firm in her mind. Ethan was out there, and she would not lose either of her children to this insanity. "Mia, hold on to me tight," she commanded, squeezing her daughter's trembling hand like a lifeline. The shadows shifted closer, but now they had a new target, the flickering light at the far end of the abyss. "Help me!" Ethan's voice, fragile and desperate, echoed in the space around them. The heart-wrenching plea broke through the suffocating fear, igniting Sarah's resolve anew. "We're coming for you, Ethan," she shouted, a fierce roar igniting the air around them. One step, another, and they surged forward, propelled by the hope that her son was alive, that they could save him. But the shadows writhed around them, pulling at her ankles, chilling whispers weaving through the night air, grazing her ear. They could hear the campers' laughter, but it was free of joy now, only filled with mockery. "You'll never reach him," they chanted, cruel and taunting. "Just a little further," Sarah panted, dragging Mia with her, the flickering light drawing her closer. A sanctuary despite the impending dread. Each step felt like running through molasses, but she couldn't give in. Not when Ethan was so near. Then, like sinuous fingers tightening around her spine, a sudden intense pull drew her backward, almost stealing the breath from her lungs. "No, not today," she yelled, defiance bubbling from the depths of her heart. She pulled against the dark force, forcing herself to take another stride. There it was, the threshold. This was it. Wait," Mia screamed, and Sarah glanced back just in time to see her daughter falter, nearly swallowed by the shadows. Time slowed as she reached out, a torrent of panic rushing through her veins. "Mia!" In an instant, she lunged, gripping her daughter tightly and shoving past the thickness of shadows that fought to cloak them. The otherworldly laughter reached a terrifying crescendo, a final cacophony that promised to celebrate their misfortune. But Sarah would not be baited. She would break through, and she would save her children, no matter the cost. They barreled toward the light, forced every ounce of strength she had left into one final sprint. Her heart thundered in her chest as they leaped toward the burst of brightness, limbs moving almost instinctively. With one last push, they dove into the radiance, the light swallowing them whole. The moment they entered, the restless darkness fell silent. Sarah gasped. The warmth flooding over her was like life itself. She blinked, vision clearing as the overwhelming shadows dissipated. The cabin around them, once foreboding, shifted into an old faded shelter, worn but welcoming. Ghostly images glided around, the echoes of laughter fading into a symphony of whispers that hollow glee turned to soft sighs of missing children, lost but unforgotten. Ethan? Breathless hope surged through her, and every instinct pointed to the heart of the space, deeply resonating in a distant corner. Then she saw him. Ethan, standing by a window, eyes wide in wonder. "Mom, look!" he exclaimed, pointing outside at a luminous glow illuminating the woods beyond a beautiful, beckoning light like the dawn after a long, cold night. Sarah rushed forward, relief crashing over her as she swept him up in her arms. "You are safe," she whispered fiercely, locking him close as tears streamed down her cheeks. "I thought I lost you." As the haunting whispers continued, a new sort of calm washed over her. The shadows had receded, retreating like a tide, leaving behind fragments of stories without end. The trio of the family stood together, no longer just chasing shadows, but securing a bond forged in fear, love, and victory. "It's all over," she breathed, more to herself than to her children. Would they remember? Would they be plagued by the horrors of what they had faced? Sarah hoped not, but for now they had each other, and that felt like an eternity of safety. Together, they made their way to the door, step by cautious step. As sunlight poured through the opening, shadows lost their grip. Sarah took a moment to stare back, where darkness once loomed large. But now it was just that, a memory. "Let us go home," she said, voice steady as she ushered Mia and Ethan outside into a world that felt newly awake. They emerged, breathing in crisp air, and the whispers faded behind them, replaced with the chirps of birds and the rustle of leaves that as they walked back toward their van. Sarah felt the grip of fear finally loosening. They were free, and she knew they would carry the memories but also the strength born from them. With heads held high, they stepped back into the sunlight, leaving behind a haunting tale, but also embracing the adventure of tomorrow, one where shadows couldn't follow. Whatever lingered in those woods would have to remain, and they would never return. This was their farewell to the dark, an exhilarating escape into life beyond terrifying encounters. And to you, dear friends, if this journey captivated your heart, and you want to see more tales of courage and chills, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive story. We need your support to keep it alive. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about what just happened. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusion. Adventure awaits, and only true fans understand the power of support.